The air was thick with mockery. Every whisper, every side glance, every smirk carved deeper into the wounds that were never seen but always felt. They laughed when you struggled, when you stumbled. Their voices echoed in the hollowness of your solitude, their words wrapping around you like chains. You think you'll make it, they sneered. Look at yourself. Pathetic. You heard them in the hallways, in the streets, in your own thoughts when you tried to sleep at night. You had nothing, no wealth, no status, no power. Just a heart that refused to break, though they tried their hardest to crush it. They found joy in your hardships. Every time life threw you down, they stood watching, arms crossed, waiting for you to give up. They saw your hunger, your desperation, your relentless attempts to make something of yourself. But instead of lending a hand, they laughed. You should quit. You'll never be one of us. It wasn't just their words that cut deep. It was their eyes, looking at you like you were less than nothing, as if your pain was a joke, your dreams a fantasy, your efforts a waste of time. But what they failed to realize was this. Every insult, every cruel laugh, every moment of humiliation was fuel. And now, they were about to learn what happens when the weak refuse to stay weak. The nights were the hardest. While they slept comfortably in their soft beds, wrapped in their privileged lives, you lay awake in the darkness, your mind buzzing with a fire they could never understand. You worked when others rested, pushed when others relaxed. The hunger they mocked became your greatest strength. When they partied, you studied. When they ridiculed, you learned. When they doubted, you prepared. And in those moments, something within you shifted. The pain hardened into steel. The rejection transformed into determination. They thought they were breaking you. They thought you were nothing but a struggling fool clawing at an impossible dream. But they didn't see what was coming. Then the first shift happened. One day, they saw you again. But something was different. The way you walked. No longer with your head bowed. No longer afraid of their eyes. Your silence was no longer submission, but power. Your presence, once unnoticed, now demanded attention. They didn't understand. How? How did you rise when they did everything to keep you down? Their laughter grew quieter, their words more hesitant. And for the first time, you saw it, the flicker of uncertainty in their eyes. They no longer spoke with the same confidence, because deep down they knew something had changed, and this was just the beginning. The tables were turning, but they didn't want to admit it, not yet. At first, they pretended not to notice. They still threw their snide comments, but something had shifted. Their words didn't land the same way anymore. It was as if they were testing the waters, unsure if their usual jabs would still sink into your skin. But you didn't flinch. They watched confused, as the same struggles they once mocked became the foundation of your strength. The long nights, the rejection, the pain, it had built something within you that they couldn't break. And now, as you stood before them, there was something unfamiliar in their eyes. Uncertainty. No longer was their laughter sharp. It wavered. No longer did they look down on you. Their eyes searched for weaknesses that no longer existed. They didn't want to believe it, because if you were rising, that meant they had been wrong, and nothing scared them more than that. Then came the first undeniable sign. You stepped forward, stronger, sharper, untouchable. Opportunities that once felt like distant dreams were now within reach. The doors that were slammed in your face began to crack open, and the ones who laughed the loudest, they were now forced to watch as you climbed higher. One by one, their smirks faded. The ones who scoffed at your struggles were now silent, because they saw what you had become. You had taken their laughter, their mockery, their cruelty, and turned it into something they couldn't control. They didn't want to envy you, but they did. It started subtly. The same people who had dismissed you, who had called you foolish, now spoke your name in hushed conversations. The same ones who had once pitied you were now trying to understand how you had surpassed them. And then the inevitable happened. They reached out. It started with small things. A nod, a forced smile, a casual question masked in curiosity. Some tried to rewrite history, pretending they had never doubted you. Others acted as if they had always believed in you. But you remembered. You remembered the nights you spent alone, the whispers, the humiliation, the way they delighted in your struggles. And now they watched you with wide eyes, realizing that the very person they once mocked had become someone they could never ignore. The power had shifted, and they hated it. The whispers had stopped. The laughter had died. Where once they stood tall, so sure of their dominance, now they lingered in the background, unsure, hesitant, afraid to meet your gaze. They had spent so long mocking your struggles, believing you would never rise. But now, as they watched you, as they saw what you had become, there was no more amusement, only regret. Regret that they had doubted you. Regret that they had wasted their time tearing you down instead of building themselves up. Regret that the person they once dismissed had surpassed them in every way imaginable. And nothing burned them more than that. They tried to reach out, not with cruelty, not with mockery, but with forced kindness. They thought that maybe, just maybe, they could rewrite the past. That if they acted as if they had always supported you, you might let them back into your world. But you remembered. You remembered the nights of loneliness, the struggle to prove yourself while they laughed at your pain. You remembered every insult, every cruel smirk, every moment they tried to convince you that you were nothing. And now, standing before them, you saw the truth. They didn't want to be your friends. They wanted to be near your power. Because now, they envied what they once mocked. You could see it in their eyes. The bitterness, the jealousy, the silent frustration of knowing they had wasted their time ridiculing someone who was destined to rise. They had built their world on arrogance, believing they were untouchable. But as they looked at you now, they realized the harshest truth of all. They were never better than you. They had just been louder. And now, as they stood in your shadow, they understood something they never could before. Power doesn't come from status. It doesn't come from wealth. It comes from endurance, from the ability to withstand every hardship, every betrayal, every humiliation, and still rise. And rise, you did. You walked past them now, no longer looking back. Their voices, once filled with cruel amusement, had turned into murmurs of disbelief. They had nothing left to say, because they knew. The one they mocked was now the one they feared. The one they belittled was now the one they wished they could be. And the most painful realization of all, you didn't need their approval. Not then, not now, not ever.